The HOA president stood on my lawn, red-faced, waving another fine in my face like it was a weapon. "This neighborhood has standards," he barked. "Your mailbox is the wrong color, your grass is too long, and those kids' bikes don't belong in the driveway." But I knew it wasn't about mailboxes, or grass, or bikes. It was about us. Behind him, a few neighbors had stopped to watch, whispering. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting to see if I would snap or back down. My kids were inside the house, peeking nervously through the curtains. My wife stood on the porch, her arms crossed tight. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was war, and I wasn't going to lose. Flashback. Moving in. A year earlier, things couldn't have felt more different. We had just bought our first home, a beautiful two-story with a wide porch, a backyard for the kids, and a tree out front that bloomed with pink flowers every spring. I remember pulling into the driveway that first day, my son bouncing in the back seat yelling, "This is our house! This is our house!" My daughter ran straight to the front yard, twirling in the grass. My wife and I looked at each other and laughed. After years of saving, sacrificing, and renting, we had finally made it. The neighbors came out to greet us. A few smiles, a few waves. One couple brought cookies. Another said, "Welcome to the neighborhood." But then came him. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just looked at me, then at my family, then back at me. His eyes were sharp, like he was scanning us. Finally, he said, "We like to keep this neighborhood orderly." I thought it was just a strange welcome. I laughed it off. My wife raised an eyebrow, but we brushed it aside. After all, new neighborhoods are always an adjustment, right? We were wrong. It started small. A week after moving in, we found an envelope taped to our front door. Inside was a fine, $50 for improper trash can placement. I stared at it in disbelief. Our cans had been neatly lined up by the curb, just like everyone else's. I walked down the street to check, and sure enough, other neighbors had their cans in the exact same spot. But theirs didn't have envelopes taped to the door. Only ours. I brought it up at the next HOA meeting, politely. I asked if maybe there had been a mistake. The HOA president leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and smirked. "No mistake. Rules are rules. Maybe in your last neighborhood things were different, but here we have standards." I felt my stomach twist. The way he said, "your last neighborhood," dripped with something more than just rules. After that, the fines came like clockwork. Mailbox not painted the approved shade of beige, grass slightly over 3 inches, children's toys visible from street, car parked too close to sidewalk. Each one felt like a slap, each one more ridiculous than the last. Meanwhile, across the street, another family left their trash cans out for days. No fine. Next door, a neighbor's grass was practically a jungle. No fine. 2 houses down, kids' bikes littered the driveway. No fine. It was only us, always us. My wife tried to stay positive at first. She said, maybe they're just strict. Maybe everyone gets these at some point. But then we saw the neighbors smiling and waving at the HOA president, laughing with him in their yards, never once mentioning a fine. And when we brought it up, they shrugged. "Oh, we've never had any problems." That's when the whispers started. One day, while I was mowing the lawn, 2 women walked by. I heard one mutter to the other, "I don't know why they moved here." Another time, at the playground, a man chuckled, "I don't think they're exactly, HOA material, are they?" It was subtle, never outright, but I felt it. My wife felt it. And my kids, they started asking questions we didn't know how to answer. Why don't the other kids want to play with us? Why does Mr. Johnson always glare at us? I swallowed my anger, trying to protect them, but inside I knew the truth. This wasn't about trash cans or grass. It was about us. The final straw came one Saturday morning. My kids had left their bikes by the driveway overnight. We woke up to find another fine taped to our door, $100 this time. But across the street, the Johnsons' kids had a trampoline, a basketball hoop, and toys scattered everywhere. No fines. I looked at the paper in my hand, then at my kids, then at the smug grin of the HOA president as he drove past in his golf cart, slowing down just enough to make eye contact. That was the moment. The moment I realized we weren't just being picked on. We were being targeted. And I decided right then, this wasn't going to continue. This was bigger than grass or bikes. It was about dignity. And I wasn't about to let anyone take that from my family. The next week should have been uneventful. It was spring. The flowers in our small garden were blooming and my kids had just learned how to ride their bikes without training wheels. For most families, that's a happy memory. For us, it turned into another line in the HOA's growing list of complaints. It started with the sound of squeaky bicycle wheels on the driveway. My son, laughing, wobbling a little, pedaled forward. My daughter clapped from the grass, cheering him on. I was recording it on my phone when a familiar figure appeared at the corner of the street. He walked briskly, clipboard in hand, eyes locked on my house as if I'd built a fortress of crime in the middle of his suburban paradise. I lowered my phone, already bracing myself. He stopped at the edge of my driveway, glanced at the bikes, leaning against the garage door, then at my son, circling in clumsy loops. His face tightened. "These bikes can't be left in the driveway," he snapped. "It violates community standards." I blinked, not sure I heard him right. "Excuse me?" I asked. He pointed at the two small bikes, their training wheels still attached, one painted blue with cartoon stickers and the other pink with streamers on the handles. "Community rules are clear," he said. "No personal items stored in public view. That includes bicycles. If I see them here again, I'll issue a fine." I almost laughed. "They're kids' bikes. They're not stored here. They're being used. They'll go inside the garage after." His lips curled as if I'd challenged the Constitution. "Rules are rules, and around here, we follow them." He scribbled something on his clipboard and walked off without another word. That night, sure enough, a letter appeared in our mailbox. A formal notice of violation. $50 for improper storage of recreational equipment in public view. I showed it to my wife at the dinner table. She slammed it down beside her plate. "Are you kidding me? Did you see the Johnsons' driveway last week? They had 2 scooters, a skateboard, and a basketball hoop out for days. No fines, no letters?" I nodded. "Exactly. It's not about bikes. It's about us." My wife went quiet. She knew what I meant, and so did I. The pattern was getting harder to ignore. The fines kept coming. 2 days later, another letter arrived. $75 fine for lawn length exceeding acceptable standard. I walked outside and measured the grass myself, barely 3 inches. I glanced across the street where the miller's lawn looked like a wild meadow, dandelions sprouting everywhere. No fines on their mailbox. The following week, $100 fine for mailbox not matching approved color. Our mailbox was plain black, like half the neighborhood, but the letter said the approved color was charcoal gray. I drove around and counted at least 10 black mailboxes on my block. No one else had been fined. I started saving every letter, tucking them into a folder that grew thicker by the week. Each violation was pettier than the last. One night I sat at the kitchen table, flipping through the stack. My wife leaned over my shoulder, shaking her head. "This is harassment," she said flatly. "He's targeting us." I didn't argue. By then, the neighbors had started whispering. I'd step outside in the mornings to grab the paper and hear fragments of conversations. "They don't keep up with standards. Always causing trouble with the HOA. Don't fit in here." I'd catch them glancing my way, then quickly turning back to their lawns or their mailboxes. One afternoon, I overheard 2 women at the park while my kids played on the swings. "I mean, this neighborhood used to be so consistent, you know?" one of them said. "Yeah, not sure they were the right fit for this community." Their voices carried just enough for me to know they weren't talking about anyone else. The final straw came one Friday evening. I was mowing the lawn, the hum of the machine steady in my ears, when I saw the HOA president striding up again. Clipboard. Always the clipboard. He waved me down and I reluctantly cut the engine. "You've been issued multiple fines," he said. "Over $1,000 now. Pay up or we'll take legal action." I stepped outside, closing the door behind me so my kids wouldn't hear. "I've got footage," I said evenly. "Proof that you're targeting us and ignoring everyone else. You keep pushing and I'll make it public." For a moment, he froze. His eyes narrowed. Then he leaned closer, his voice low and venomous. "Listen, you people don't belong here. You never did. You think anyone's going to take your side? You're just stirring up trouble." I didn't back down. "We'll see who takes whose side." I pulled my phone from my pocket and held it up, recording him as his face twisted with rage. That was the moment I knew we had him. That night, my wife and I sat down with the binder, the footage, and a plan. "We take this to court," I said, "and if the court won't listen, we take it to the community, to the news, to anyone who will." She nodded, her eyes fierce. "He wants to make us an example. Fine, we'll make him one instead." It was risky. We knew the battle ahead would be ugly. The whispers would get louder. Some neighbors would turn against us completely. But the truth was on our side now, and we weren't afraid to use it. For the first time since moving into that perfect little neighborhood, I felt hope. Not because the fight was over, but because it was just beginning. The day we filed the lawsuit against the HOA president, the neighborhood went silent. Some neighbors avoided eye contact. Others whispered in groups at the end of driveways. A few even gave us nods of quiet encouragement when no one else was watching. The president himself? He doubled down. Letters kept coming, fines stacked higher, threats grew nastier, but now each one went straight into our binder of evidence. It wasn't just harassment anymore. It was ammunition. Weeks later, we walked into the county courthouse. My wife squeezed my hand as we stepped into the echoing hallway, our binder heavy in my other hand. Across the room, the HOA president sat smugly with his lawyer, tapping his pen like he'd already won. He glanced at us, sneered, and whispered something to his attorney that made them both chuckle. For a moment, fear twisted in my stomach. What if no one believed us? What if we lost? But then I remembered the footage. His words, his sneer, his voice saying, "You people don't belong here." The fear turned into fire. When it was our turn, I stood at the witness stand. The judge, a stern woman with sharp glasses, asked me to explain. I opened the binder, flipping through the stack of fines. "Your Honor, this isn't about lawn grass or mailboxes. This is about targeted harassment and abuse of authority." I handed over side-by-side photos. My lawn neatly trimmed versus the miller's wild jungle. My plain black mailbox versus 10 others identical to it. My kids' bikes neatly leaned against the garage versus toys scattered across half the neighborhood. "No one else was fined for these things," I said firmly. "Only us." The judge leaned forward, eyebrows raised. "Do you have proof?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "We installed cameras." On the screen, our attorney played the footage. The courtroom fell silent as the video showed the HOA president walking past the miller's overgrown lawn, clipboard untouched. Then cut to him marching up to our door, slapping a fine notice down for the same violation. Then came the real blow, the footage of our confrontation on the driveway. His voice rang out through the speakers. "Listen, you people don't belong here. You never did." Gasps filled the courtroom. Even the judge froze for a moment, her expression hardening. I looked over at the HOA president. His face had gone pale. His attorney whispered frantically, but he just shook his head, jaw clenched tight. In the days that followed, word spread through the neighborhood. Some neighbors were furious at him. Mrs. Patel stopped by to thank us, saying she'd lived in fear of his harassment for years. Others left anonymous notes in our mailbox. "We stand with you." But not everyone was supportive. A group of residents signed a petition defending him, saying we were causing trouble and dividing the community. It didn't matter. The truth was out now, and the court had seen it with their own eyes. The verdict. A week later, the judge delivered her ruling. The court finds the HOA president guilty of discriminatory harassment and abuse of authority. Effective immediately, he is removed from his position. All fines issued against the plaintiffs are null and void. Furthermore, restitution in the amount of $10,000 will be paid to the family for damages. I gripped my wife's hand as relief washed over me. For the first time since moving into that perfect suburban neighborhood, I felt like we could breathe. Across the courtroom, the president slumped in his seat, his smugness gone. His attorney gathered their papers quickly, avoiding eye contact with anyone. It was over. Life didn't change overnight. Some neighbors still kept their distance, the whispers didn't disappear completely. But the constant stream of fines stopped. The harassment ended. And slowly, things began to feel normal. One evening, I sat on the porch watching my kids ride their bikes on the driveway. No clipboard, no threats, no fines, just laughter and squeaky wheels on the pavement. My wife came out and sat beside me. "We did it," she said softly. I nodded. We didn't just fight for us. We fought for everyone he ever tried to push out. She smiled, leaning against my shoulder. And we won. Months later, a letter came from the HOA. Not a fine this time, but an apology. It announced a new board election with promises of fair treatment and stricter oversight to prevent abuse of power. I didn't care much for HOA politics anymore, but I knew one thing. They wouldn't be singling out families like mine again. Not after this. The neighborhood still wasn't perfect, but when I saw my kids playing freely on the lawn, neighbors waving as they passed, and no more letters in the mailbox, I knew we'd finally carved out our place here. We belonged. And no one could tell us otherwise.